campfire. And the two, they look like real cowboys, and they're sitting at the campfire, and one guy looks at the other cowboy and goes, "Well, Bubba," because his name was Bubba. He says, "Well, Bubba," he said, "are we going to have blush or Chardonnay?" And that was the cartoon, and it was really, you know, the case back then. People had disbelief that you could grow grapes in Texas, and so then we went to the Rodney Dangerfield era, which was the 90s, where we were proving to people that yes, we could make great wine in Texas, and we were getting people really converted to the concept that we could make great wines. And now we're in the, I call it the age of realization, where we are actually getting people from all over the world coming to us and saying, "Oh yes, I've had Texas wines and they're really good." So it's an interesting thing, and I can relate it back to California, because my humble winemaking beginning started at UC Davis in 1968, and took classes in winemaking in '68, and worked the crush in 1968 at BV, Beaulieu Vineyard. And I went to the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco in '68, and I asked for BV, George Latour, which was considered the best Cabernet made in the state of California. And the little sommelier, who was, you know, like the same age as I was back then, 21, 22 years old, he looked at me and said, I said, "Can I get a George Latour Cabernet Sauvignon?" He looked at me and said, "We don't serve that kind of wine here." And I said, "What do you mean that kind of wine?" He said, "We only have the great wines of France and Germany and Italy." And that was the mentality in California in the 60s. So, you know, and that was a good experience to have, because I realized that this was not going to be an overnight success. And actually, to a little bit of our chagrin, we had an early experience of an overnight success. What was the year that Yano won the gold in San Francisco? Was it 77 or 78 or 80?
83. 83, 84.
It was 83. We got Yano Estacado from Lubbock, I think, got a double gold in the San Francisco wine competition, which is the granddaddy of all wine competitions in the United States. So all of a sudden, you've got this, oh my God, I mean, these guys can do an incredible wine, and we only had maybe a dozen, maybe, wineries that were even producing back then, and it was one of those things that it was a great wine, but there was no substantive industry at the time, and it was kind of like a flash in the pan, and I think that's a detriment. I think that really wasn't to our advantage. And now the industry is so substantial. Now is when we don't even make a big deal anymore about getting a double gold in San Francisco. I think this year we had maybe 3 or 4. We got a gold in San Francisco, and so it's not an uncommon thing anymore. So.